All right, today we're diving into a really unsettling mystery. It all starts on what should have been a dream Caribbean cruise, but it ends with a question that, to this day, has no answer. What happened to Amy Lynn Bradley?
And this really is the central puzzle of the whole thing, right? It's the question that's just tortured Amy's family for decades. I mean, a cruise ship, it's basically a floating city. It's a closed environment. So how on earth does a person just disappear from one? So let's set the scene. It's March 24th, 1998. A 23-year-old woman, Amy Lynn Bradley, is on what's supposed to be an amazing vacation on this huge cruise ship, the Rhapsody of the Seas. But somewhere out there in the ocean, between Aruba and Curacao, that dream vacation just stops. This is the last place anyone can say for sure where she was. Okay, to really get a handle on this mystery, we've got to start right at the most critical point. The exact morning her family realized she was gone. Now, the timeline here is absolutely crucial, and you're going to see it's just an incredibly small window of time. So at 5:15 in the morning, her dad, Ron, he sees her out on their cabin balcony. Looks like she's asleep. But get this, just 15 minutes later at 5:30, he looks again, and she's not there. By 6 a.m., the family is in a panic, raising the alarm. Everything, and I mean everything, went wrong in just 15 minutes. So you might be wondering, who was this young woman at the heart of it all? Let's back up for a second and talk about Amy the person, not just Amy the mystery. Yeah, see, this wasn't some reckless teenager we're talking about. Amy was 23, she'd graduated college, and here's a really important detail. She was a skilled, trained lifeguard. She's on this trip with her mom, dad, and her brother, and everyone who knew her, especially her family, said she was super responsible, not a risk taker at all. And that's what makes what happened next so hard to wrap your head around.
All right, to even begin to understand how she could have just vanished, we have to look really closely at her final hours. Because the night before she went missing, well, that night holds some really important and, frankly, pretty ominous clues.
So the night started out pretty normal, like any vacation night. Amy and her brother, Brad, they're hanging out at the ship's nightclub. It closes around 1 in the morning, so they head over to a party with the ship's band. Around 3:30 a.m., Brad decides he's had enough and goes back to the cabin, leaving Amy there. That was the last time he ever saw his sister. But here's the thing. This wasn't just some innocent party. Her family said later that some of the crew members were giving Amy a lot of, let's call it, special attention that night. And it was the kind of attention that was making her really uncomfortable. So Amy is now officially missing. And this is where the story takes a sharp turn, right? It goes from a family vacation to a frantic search, a really flawed investigation, and two completely different theories about what could have possibly happened to her. The family is begging for help right away, but they feel like they're just met with these critical delays. The ship doesn't start a full-blown search. It doesn't stop people from getting off. It just sails right into port in Curacao, and thousands of passengers just get off the ship. Any one of them could have seen something, known something. It was a huge mistake. And right from the start, from moment one, Amy's family was saying, no way was this an accident. Her mom, Iva, put it so powerfully. She said, they took my daughter. I don't feel she went overboard. I feel she was abducted. Just total conviction. So this really leaves us with two totally different paths, two stories. On one hand, you have the tragic accident theory. Right? Maybe she was intoxicated, disoriented, and she fell. It's the simplest explanation. But then you have the other, much darker theory, foul play, abduction. This idea is fueled by that special attention from the crew, the idea that she was targeted and taken off that ship, and her family is 100% in this camp. They insist there is no way their daughter, a trained lifeguard, would have just accidentally fallen. Amy's story is heartbreaking on its own, but it also brings up a bigger, really unsettling question. How is it even possible for someone to just vanish from a massive modern cruise ship? Well, the first problem is a big one, and it's all about the law. See, when you're out in international waters, it's not like you can just call the local cops. The law that matters is the law of whatever country the ship is registered in, and that's often a place like Panama or the Bahamas. So right away, you have this massive confusion over who's even in charge of an investigation. And those kinds of delays, they can be absolutely fatal when you're trying to collect evidence. And then you've got the physical blind spots on the ship itself. I mean, these things are literally floating cities. And back in 1998, CCTV, forget about it.
The camera coverage was so sparse, especially in the passenger areas, so there was basically no digital trail for investigators to follow. On top of that, you've got this constant churn of people, thousands of passengers and crew getting on and off. It's almost impossible to track everyone, let alone figure out who might have seen something.
Let this number sink in. Over 2,000 people were on that ship. 2,000. Just think about that for a second. Trying to find one person, or a suspect, in a crowd the size of a small town, a town where everyone is about to scatter to all corners of the globe, it's a monumental, almost impossible task.
And look, even if we go with the accident theory, the ocean is just massive. For a ship that big to even slow down, turn around, and start a search, by then, a person in the water could be miles and miles away. A successful rescue becomes incredibly, incredibly unlikely.
This search for Amy Lynn Bradley, in some ways, it continues to this day. It's just a heartbreaking tragedy for a family that's been left with no answers for so long. Her disappearance is this chilling reminder, that even in a world we think is so connected, so watched, there are still huge blind spots. And it leaves us with this one final, haunting question. On a city at sea with thousands of people all around, who is really watching?